Hello guys, welcome to Small Somewhere Maths tutorial. So the today's lesson we are going to talk about the number pattern, but then we are only going to focus on quadratic sequence, right? So from this lesson, I'm going to show you how do we undress the examine, like the ways of undressing the examine, right? So watch all this video so that you can see how we undress the examine, because I'm going to share some tricks and also tell you be aware of this kind of things or be aware of this kind of questions from the examine in the quadratic sequence, right? So before we can attempt to answer the questions, let's talk about the quadratic sequence. Quadratic sequence. We know that we know what is the quadratic, right? So now we have the quadratic sequence. So the quadratic sequence, the formula of it is represented by an squared plus bn plus c, right? This is the quadratic formula of the quadratic sequence, right? So having these formulas, and we also, what do we know about the quadratic sequence? We know that quadratic sequence, let me do this, it has two difference. It has two difference. In simpler terms, it has first difference, second one it has the second difference, right? So you need to be aware of these things. So in quadratic sequence, this is the formula of the quadratic sequence, and in the quadratic sequence, we have it has two difference, which is the first difference and the second difference, right? So now let's do the questions. Let's try to answer these questions. So the first question says, write down the next term of the sequence, right? So we can see that we are given 2, 3, 10, and 23, right? So how do we find the next term? Finding the next term, we're going to do something like this. After doing something like this, we are going to subtract 10 from 23, and 23 minus 10 is going to give us 13, right? And then 10 minus 3 is going to give us 7, and then 3 minus 2 is going to give us what? It's going to give us 1, right? Then we are not done. We can see that we don't have a common difference. That's why they call it what? The quadratic sequence, meaning it has what? It has two differences that we talked about. So meaning we also have to do another difference. Remember, this is the what? It's the first difference, right? Which is 1, 7, 13. Now from the second difference, we have 13 minus 7 give us 6, and then 7 minus 1 give us 6. This is the what? It's the second, um, is the second difference here. Yeah, it is the second difference, right? So now, how do we calculate or how do we find the next term? Finding the next term, this is what we are going to do. I'm just going to erase the second difference and the first difference here so that we can have space. Okay, now we have something like this. Then how do we find the next term? Finding the next term, we are going to write 6 here. You see what I did? I just took this line Then after it goes there, then when it goes there, I'm going to say 13 plus 6. Can you see 13 plus 6? It's going to give me what? 19, which is the first difference. Then after I need to take this one, need to combine these two, then it's going to be 23 plus 19, which is 42. Can you see how we find the next term without using the formula? So meaning the next term is what? We saw that it's going to give us 42, right? So now let's do 2.1.2. So from the 2.1.2, it says determine the nth term of the sequence, or it can say determine the general term of the sequence. So whenever I say determine the general term of the sequence or determine the nth term of the sequence, it's the same thing. So let the examiner not play with your mind. Whenever it says determine the nth term of the sequence or determine the general term of the sequence, is the same thing. So remember, the formula of the nth term of the general sequence is Tn is equals to an squared plus bn plus c, right? So we need to find the value of a, b, and c. How do we find the value of a, b, c? Can you see what we wrote there from the first question? Is 2, 3, 3, 3. So always know that the second difference 2a is equals to the second difference. The first value from the second difference. And then 3a plus b is equals to the first value from the first difference. And then the last one we have a plus b plus c, which is equals to 2. In simpler terms, 2a is equals to the first the first value from the second difference, which is what here. We can see that here it's 6, right? Then we are going to calculate for a, and when we calculate for a, we are going to get 3, right? And then now we come to the first difference. The first difference, we know that 3a plus b is equals to the first value from the first difference. And when we check here, what is the first value from the first difference? We can see that it's 1, right? So meaning we're going to write 1 here. Then solve for b. Then where we see a, we're going to plug that 3 plus 1. Our b is going to give us negative 8, right? When it gives us negative 8 like this, now we're going to do what? The last value. The last value says that a plus b plus c is equals to the first value from the first sequence, right? From the sequence, which is what there. We can see that it's 2. Meaning we only focus on, let me use the different, meaning we only focus on the first values. Right, so meaning we only focus on these first values. 2 is equals to 6, 3a plus b is equals to negative 1, a plus b is equals to 2. If it was 3 here, we are going to write a plus b is equals to 3. And if here it was negative 4, we are going to write 3a plus b is equals to negative 4. And if it was 8 here, we are going to write 2a is equals to 8. Because these are the first values of the first difference, right? So now let's solve for c, right? Let me do it here before I can erase. What is c? We can see that our a is 3. What is b? B is negative 8 plus c is equals to 2. Therefore, the c is equals to what? C is equals to 7, right? So after writing all these values, we can now write the general term, which is a, and squared plus bn plus c. So where we see a, we're going to replace with the values that we got. And for b, we can see that it's negative 8 and for c is plus 2, right? So if you didn't know how to calculate, now we found we have determined the nth term or the general term. Now we are done with 2.1.2. So guys, let's say you didn't know how to calculate or how to write down the next term of the sequence, or you are not sure about your answer. How can you prove it? You're going to use this formula that you got, which is Tn is equals to 3n squared minus 8n plus 2, right? Then how are you going to use it? Remember, this is T1, this is T2, this is T3, this is T4, this is T5. So in simpler terms, we want what? T5. So meaning where you see n, you're going to replace it with 5, and then you're going to say that you are going to get 42. So I'm just going to erase here so that we can continue. Okay guys, so now let's do 2.1.3. 2.1.3 says calculate the 20th term of the sequence, meaning whenever they say calculate the 20th term of the sequence, in simpler terms, they mean that your t n is what? Is now t20. So where you see n, you're going to replace it with what? With 20, right? In simpler terms, that's what it says. Whenever they say calculate the term, let's say whenever they say calculate the term of the 15, 14, 20, or 10, next, where you see n, you're going to replace it with what? With the given value of the term, right? So we can see that from this 2.1.3, the term that we're given is what is 20. So where we see n, we're going to replace it with what? With 20. Therefore, we're going to have 3 into 20 squared minus 8, 20 plus 7. Then we're going to plug everything in our calculator, and you'll find out that your answer is 1047, right? So this is how you calculate the term of the sequence. So whenever they say calculate the term of the sequence, you'll be given that value. Therefore, that value that you are given for that term, you replace it where you see and then calculate. So 2.1.4, this is what like people confuse 2.1.4 and 2.1.3. 2.1.4, it says which term of the sequence will have the value of 135. So in simpler terms, let's go to 2.1.3. The value of the sequence here is what? It's 1047, and the term is what? It's 20, right? Can you guys see? So now 2.1.4, it says which term of the sequence will have the value of 135. So meaning the first thing is to write down that formula, which is minus 8n plus 7. So which term of the sequence will have the value of 135? So meaning we are given the value, we need to calculate what the term. And the term here is represented by what? By n. So meaning we have Tn, which is 135, is equals to 3n squared minus 8n plus 7, right? Then we solve for x, going to have 0, 3n squared minus 8n plus 7, because it goes to that other side, it's going to change the sign. It's going to have negative 35. Therefore, we have 3n squared minus 8n minus, it's going to give us 128 into 0, right, is equals to 0. So now we solve for n. You can see that it's a quadratic. We can use it's a quadratic equation. We can use quadratic formula. So our n is equals to minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. We have minus into our b is negative 8, therefore plus or minus our b is negative 8 squared minus 4. What is our a is 3, and then our c is minus 128 all over 2 into 3, right? And then our value is going to, if we calculate this using a calculate, plugging everything using a calculate, we're going to find 8 or n is equals to negative 16 over 3. So now we have found the two values, and then the question says which term of the sequence will have the value of 135. So which one are you going to choose? We are going to choose n is equals to 8. We're not going to choose this one for fraction. So whenever there's a fraction, you don't choose it, you only choose one. Whenever there's a negative, you don't choose it. You choose the positive one with the whole number, right? So our answer is going to be n is equals to 8. How can you prove it? Let's say the question says calculate the eighth term of the sequence. You are going to get what? When you calculate it, you are going to get the value which is what? 135. So this is how you solve this kind of questions. Trust me, in each exam, these questions are going to be there. These questions, it's either 3 or 4, all of them. But then 3 of them are going to be there, meaning 98% of these questions are going to be there in your exam. So make sure that you do master these questions. So kindly like and comment, share the video with others. For the next video, I'm going to talk about the arithmetic and also the geometric sequence, right? So the geometric series, I mean. So kindly subscribe and press that the ring alert bell so that whenever I upload, it can alert you. Thank you.